Hello friends, acquaintances and internet trolls. You're all very welcome back to the channel. It is Jake Sanderson aka Snowman Cycling and we've got another race recap for you today. It's another retro race flashback from about 8 months ago. We're going to dip back into a ZRL race when I tackled a particularly brutal race where we did one lap of chasing the sun in Makuri Islands. As you can see there, we've got 4 scored sprints on the course along with a KOM, so it's particularly nasty. It's the first time I've ever done this course, and as you can see, the sprints are pretty much as soon as we get out of the pen. So we're going to jump into this one, have a look at the chaos as it starts thick and fast. We're going to hit not 1 but 2 sprints before we've even got pretty much 5k into the race. So this one's just going to be about trying to brace myself, get through these 2 segments without burning too many matches. I've got teammates that are going to do the bulk of the work for me here. My legs are going to be saved later on, especially for the KOM and the sprint at the very end. But even then, it's still not easy to go with these surges. I'm still having to do big bursts, 6-7 watts per kilo to stick with the group and make sure I'm not getting dropped before we've even got 1 minute into the race. And these ZRL races are so surgy because of the points on offer that I find, I don't know about you guys, I find that you cannot go for every segment. Not if you want to still be there at the end, in with a chance of winning and getting some points along the way. You really have to pick your battles and make sure you're fighting the right fights. You can't fight everybody all the time, every single segment. So instead, sometimes you have to show a little bit of restraint, let your teammates do that work, and combine your forces together to make the best team overall points. That is, after all, the aim of the game with ZRL. It's not who's the strongest rider, it's who's got the strongest team. And as we come back up to this next sprint here, I'm pretty confident that I've got the best sprinters on my team, which means I'm happy to let them do that work, and I'm going to save those legs, save those matches, save those watts for when I really need them a little bit later on. And spoiler alert, we're really going to need them on the KOM later on, because that is where the race is really going to kick off, as we might expect. So I do my best to let my teammates work for me there. I still have to put in a surge, as you can see, over 500 watts just to make sure that I don't get dropped. So energy that I'd rather be saving, but it is what it is. We're only 5 minutes in and it feels way more brutal than most races do at the 5-minute mark. So hopefully it calms down a little bit as we move through to the next segment. And thankfully we're able to get a little bit of recovery here because there's not another segment for about 12 kilometers or so after this, so plenty of time to spin the legs and recover. And you've always got to keep that in mind. Even if you're really hurting during a race, you only really have to worry about the next difficulty, and at this point it's going to be very difficult for anybody to get dropped unless they're really not paying attention or basically stop pedaling, as long as they get over this rise here. So we do have to do a little bit of the KOM, but it wasn't particularly hard. I don't think anybody got dropped at that point, and then we go back to the easy numbers for the next few K as everybody gets that recovery, keeping one eye on the next segment. And as we're skipping through to that, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody that watches, likes, and especially subscribes to this channel. We've had a huge month in January. We've gained so many subscribers, so many watch times, so many views. It's been by far the biggest month for this channel, pretty much the same as the rest of the year combined. So I'm really hoping we can capitalize on that moving forward for the rest of 2023. So a huge thank you if you're an old subscriber, a new subscriber, you take the time to watch, like, and comment. It really means a lot to me, and it really helps this small channel out with the YouTube algorithm. And it makes all these painful hours of editing worthwhile, knowing that you guys are watching it and enjoying it. And some of you have been asking me about Buy Me a Coffee links and Patreon links. Well, I'm very pleased to announce I've finally set those up. They're available in the description below. Don't currently make any money from YouTube, so this is a way that you can support the channel if you want to. There's some options for if you just want to support the channel. There's also some extra added bonuses like getting your names on the credits at the end of every episode. And I'm also very pleased to announce that I'm now offering the Zwift Race Coaching Analysis service that I give all the members of my Snow CC race team. That's available on Patreon as well. So if you want to improve your Zwift racing game, like all the members of Snow CC, then you can also get that option on there as well. But remember, that's just an additional thing for those that have been asking about it. There's absolutely no obligation to do that. And remember, of course, all the YouTube content that I make is going to remain on YouTube and remain free for you loyal fans. That's never going to change. And as we got through that sprint there with not too much happening, or so I thought, as you can see just up ahead here, somebody plays the cleverest move anybody does all race, and that's the strongest rider in the race who just popped that ghost power up and has appeared 50 meters down the road with a 2-3 second gap doing 5 watts per kilo. So that's really bad news for everybody else. There's not much we can do about that one. If I'd spotted the mountain goat go, I might have tried to go with her. Some of you might remember her from some of the older videos. She's a 5.2 watt per kilo rider. She's really, really light, which is why she's in B, which basically means she cannot be countered. If she puts on a move like that, nobody can go with her because they're either going to get DQ'd or they're going to blow up. So great move from her. She's going to do her best now to TT it to the finish line. So I'm pretty annoyed that I missed that move, but in all likelihood, I probably wasn't strong enough to go with her anyway, and I just have to take it on the chin. As I'm contemplating my poor life choices there, I can see that the other strongest rider in the group, Ed Lowe, has made a move. And this time, I'm not letting anybody go without me. I want to be part of the fun. I want to be part of the party. And Ed Lowe is strong enough to drag me to the finish. So I'm going with him. He's the main rider that I'm concerned about in this group anyway. He's performed really well over the course of this season, and he's very, very strong. So I'm going to try and use the gap that he's got to draft him a little bit as we start this climb. This is probably going to be about 7 minutes of absolute hell. We can see the mountain goat is 32 seconds ahead. She even did a bike change, got back on the bike again, and was still that far ahead that she didn't even need to worry about. The rest of us bums sat back here while she flies up that gravel climb. And now we're here on the climb. My team is basically looking at me going, we've got you to this point. We've done the hard work and the sprints. Now it's your turn to go out there and get some points. And I'm going to do my best to oblige them. I'm going to make this hard on the climb. I'm going to try and get rid of as many riders as I can, because when we come down the other side of this, we've got a sprint and then we're pretty much straight at the finish. So anybody that gets over the top here in that front group is going to be there at the finish. So it's in my interest to try and get rid of as many of them as I can. But I also don't really want to sit there at tempo on the front pacing them, so I'm going to have to make sure that nobody gets away, and then I have to put in some surges and some attacks to try and make it hard, get rid of a few riders. And of course I'm going to keep an eye on Ed Lowe, make sure he doesn't get away either. And as we're about halfway up this climb, I noticed that it's mainly one rider from the Portuguese Tuggers group here that's putting the pace on. They're a really strong group of climbers. Those guys aren't particularly great sprinters for the most part, but boy can they climb. And when there's a couple of them in the group, they're going to keep the pace really high and try and bin off the weaker riders who are maybe a bit heavier with not as good watts per kilo. So we've got El Barbosa here, Captain Barbosa from Pirates of the Caribbean on the front of the group. At least that's what I saw in my head. Maybe it was the oxygen debt, maybe it was the delirium, but I'm trying to hold on to his wheel as the group is really stringing out a little bit. And I'm pretty sure at this point that there's some rope-a-dope going on from the riders in the group behind me. They know that I'm quite strong. They know that Captain Barbosa is quite strong, and they're going to let us do a lot of the work here. But especially people like Ed Lowe, you can bet your bottom dollar he's got more left in the tank than he acts like he does right now. And we're going to see that a little bit further towards the top of this climb as Captain Barbosa really starts to put the pressure on here, and he manages to get a gap, and he manages to drop everybody else in this group except me, because Barbosa, you will always remember this as the day that you nearly dropped Captain Jake Sparrow, but it was not to be. I was not giving in. I was not letting go of that wheel. And as we start to get towards the top of this climb here, I realise I'm in a really good position and there could well be some points on offer if I play this correctly. So I do work a little bit with Captain Barbosa here because we've got a bit of a gap, and I want us to make the most of that gap. There's no point getting that gap to let the rest of the riders come back again and get on our wheel. So we take turns there. But the group behind us is still working away, and they're still pushing towards us. So I think that it's going to be a little bit of heartbreak. That group is starting to gain on us here, even though we're working. Captain Barbosa is still doing pretty big numbers there, 5 watts per kilo, but there's a lot of draft, and this is a gravel climb where it's quite slow speed with a lot of rolling resistance, so it's hard to get away. If you've only got a gap of 10, 15, 30 metres, it's quite difficult to keep that gap. Ideally, you want a bit bigger one where there's no draft whatsoever available. And as the group starts to catch us here, our old friend from before, Ed Lowe, pops his power up and comes flying past us like a bullet. But I am alert to the danger, and I'm not going to let him do that again. So I make sure I use everything I've got to get on his wheel here. And I burned so many matches there, hit over 500 watts just to make sure that I'm on his wheel as we come around to the banner here. And I managed to get in front of him, and I just put the power on, lead out from the front, and managed to stick just ahead of him and pick up those second place across the line FTS and FAL points. Really, really valuable, and at least no matter what happens for the rest of the race here, I've managed to gain some points for the team. And we definitely did bin off a few riders from the back of the group there, as we've got only 8 riders in this group here, so including the Mountain Goat, who's still 30 seconds ahead, even with her bike swap back to the road bike, means there's about 9 of us in that front group. So it's very much still up for grabs here, whether we're going to be able to get a good result or not. There's a very big difference between 2nd place on the road and 9th place on the road. And I'm never going to settle for 9th place on the road if 2nd is an option. So we're going to do what we can to fight for every place here. But I really don't do myself any favours as we watch this. I cannot really explain what was going through my mind here. I saw Ed Lowe trying to get away with 3k to go or so. I know there's a sprint coming up in the next 500 meters, so I'm not really sure if he's going for sprint points or if he's trying to get a break and hold that break to the finish. Maybe it's both. But as we see the sprint start line here, for some reason I inexplicably think that's the sprint finish line, and we've already gone through it. So actually that's the start of the sprint. I'm now basically freewheeling, just making sure that I'm closing the gaps here as I let everybody come around me and steal those points from me. So absolute amateur hour here. What was I thinking? I can only assume that was the oxygen debt from the KOM a little bit earlier on, but that's the stupidest mistake I've made in a race in ages. Really poor form there, and just shows what can happen if you're not paying attention or you're an idiot. And so far, this race has just been nothing but an out-and-out bloody brawl, leaving us all battered, bruised, and now, unfortunately, I have to think about the finish. I know Ed Lowe's got the best sprint here as an 80-kilo rider. I know I've got a pretty good sprint, and I've got a decent chance of the podium here. And I elect to go hard, go fast, go first, go early, and hopefully go all the way into second place behind the mountain goat. So as we hit the 300-meter mark, it's time. I go and I lead out from the front. I pop my power up and I just bite down on the mouthpiece, grip the handlebars as hard as I can and try to squeeze every last watt out. But there he is. Ed Lowe comes streaming past me and takes that second place off me. You can see the annoyance on my face, but it is what it is. We fought, we've brawled, we've battled our way onto the podium, and I think we deserved that one. It sure felt like we were in a fight, that's for sure. And aren't those always the hardest races, the ones where it's just attritional effort after attritional effort. You feel like you've got nothing left in the tank at the end. That was definitely the case for this one. So I hope you enjoyed my suffering there. Remember, please like, comment and subscribe. It really helps the algorithm for smaller channels. Check out the links below for the Patreon and the Buy Me a Coffee pages. And remember, most importantly, race fast, ride hard, and that you are appreciated.